28th of August, the United States has confirmed overnight that it has carried out a drone strike against a member of the Islamic State group in Afghanistan.
The ISK group said it carried out the attack outside Kabul airport on Thursday that may have killed as many as 170 people, including 13 US troops.
It comes as the UK's evacuation flights are expected to end this weekend. Graham Satchell reports.
The final flights leaving Kabul airport. The British effort here is all but done. It has been a mammoth logistical operation. In just 2 weeks, more than 14,000 people airlifted by the RAF to safety in the UK. But the Ministry of Defence acknowledges as many as 1,000 former interpreters and other staff will be left behind.
We are so worried about our future. I think it's not fair. It's like betrayal of their own heroes.
The horrifying aftermath of the terror attack at the airport. President Biden promised to hunt down ISK, the group responsible, and overnight, US forces have carried out a drone strike in eastern Afghanistan, killing a so-called terrorist planner. Among those killed in the suicide bombing, London taxi driver Mohammed Niazi, who travelled to Kabul to help his family escape. His eldest daughter is missing, his wife also killed. Kabul's main hospital is full of the injured, like 2-year-old Mohammed Reza, fighting for his life. What chance now that these people, many of whom worked for Western forces, will be able to get to safety?
There will sadly be people who haven't got through, people who might qualify. And what I would say to them is that we will shift heaven and earth to help them get out. We will do whatever we can.
Immediately outside the airport, the crowds of people have gone, the streets empty. The Taliban, in American military vehicles, have set up roadblocks to stop people getting near. Some Taliban leaders claim to have already taken over parts of the airport, a claim denied by the MOD and the Pentagon.
They are not in charge of any of the gates, are not in charge of any of the airport operations. That is still under U.S. military control.
The global effort to get people to safety is now ending. These German troops have already returned home. Spanish troops are back in Madrid. British and American forces will be the last to go. The 20-year Western mission in Afghanistan ends in a chaotic, bloody withdrawal, with the Taliban ready to take charge. Graham Satchell, BBC News.
Our political correspondent Jessica Parker joins us now. Jessica, good morning to you. The question still remains just how soon will the British operation end in Afghanistan?
Well, Boris Johnson yesterday was already talking about the operation coming to its final hours. We know the efforts to evacuate civilians from the airport in Kabul were already pretty much over. The focus now on getting those 1,000 British troops out of Afghanistan. That, as we understand it, is underway. I don't think we'll get final confirmation that that has happened until it has happened for security reasons. That's something the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, has talked about. But ministers have been at pains to stress that the final withdrawal of UK troops isn't an end to things because, of course, this outstanding issue of those who have been left behind, whether they're Afghans who've worked with UK authorities or indeed British nationals. And there, of course, is the refugee scheme that the government recently announced as well. Ministers wrote to MPs last night about this second phase now in terms of getting people out of Afghanistan, about finding safe passage for those people. But it is pretty clear that a lot of the details are still being worked out at the moment. And of course, as well, it's not yet clear as to what extent the Taliban will cooperate. So there is a danger for the government, again, that it could look like it is playing catch up. So while this weekend we do expect the UK military presence in Afghanistan to end after a 20-year operation, there are still many things left to be resolved.
Indeed. Jessica, thank you. Jessica Parker there.
Coronavirus plans for schools in England have been described as a recipe for chaos by education unions who say they will not be enough to prevent a rise in infections. The government scientific advisors have warned it is extremely likely cases in schools will be high by late September. The government said it has updated its advice on how to respond to an outbreak with minimum disruption to education.
NHS organisations in England have been told to prepare for a possible decision about whether all 12 to 15-year-olds will be offered a vaccination. No decision has officially been made, but the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation is continuing to review data on broadening the rollout. The government said it's also continuing to prepare for a booster programme to ensure that those most vulnerable to COVID-19 have their protection against the virus extended ahead of winter.
Emergency services are searching for a man who works at a plastics manufacturer that went up in flames earlier today. Houses and businesses near the factory in Leamington Spa were evacuated after the sky filled with a large plume of black smoke. Firefighters said although the blaze had been contained, it would take several days to put it out fully. An investigation is now underway.
Now, plans to ban single-use plastic plates, cutlery and polystyrene cups in England have just been announced to help tackle plastic pollution.
The measures will be considered in a public consultation this autumn, with Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland having similar plans. Here's our political correspondent, Nick Eardley.
This is our bamboo lunch sets.
Is this the future of eating on the go? Paris sells bamboo cutlery across the UK.
We start working with bamboo and hemp.
Sustainable items which he hopes are part of the answer to reducing plastic consumption. What do you think about the idea of banning plastic cutlery?
Yep, I will vote for anybody who will ban it. I think plastic is everywhere. Look, we cannot get rid of plastic completely, but there is definitely certain areas where we can improve.
This is the problem. Plastic in oceans around the world, deadly for a number of species. Campaigners have been urging the government to act.
The reality is that, we are really facing an environmental crisis. Our oceans are full of plastic. They're killing marine life, they're damaging our ecosystems. Banning these items is going to contribute to stopping plastic pollution. We need the government to go much, much, much further. We're facing a plastics crisis and we need to turn off the tap.
And this is what ministers want to ban: single-use plastic cutlery and plates. It's all part of a strategy from the government to try and get rid of what it calls avoidable plastic waste by 2042. But so far anyway, there's no mention of things like this, plastic coffee cups, and some want ministers to go further. There will now be a consultation, but it could be another 18 months before a ban becomes law. Friends of the Earth say faster, more radical action is needed.
We need government to take an overall approach to say that what we're going to do is bring an end to all plastic pollution, and what we're going to do is drastically reduce the amount of all single-use products, not just a fork followed by a spoon followed by a cup.
We're trying to be sustainable.
Paris hopes increased awareness and reduced cost will make alternatives to plastic more popular. If we came to your house for dinner, we'd all be eating with bamboo cutlery.
I will give you bamboo cutlery, no plastic in my house.
Nick Eardley, BBC News.
Now, lots of us enjoy feeding the birds in our gardens, but are we doing more harm than good with bird feeders? There is new evidence suggesting that supplementary feeding could disrupt a delicate ecological balance beyond our windowsills and gardens. Our science correspondent Victoria Gill has the details.
A welcome dose of nature on our doorsteps, window ledges and in our gardens. In the UK, we spend more than £250 million every year on food for our feathered friends. But there's a limited number of familiar resident species that eat the thousands of tons of peanuts, seeds and suet that we put out for the birds. And scientists now say that this constant supply of supplementary food could have boosted the population of those species at the expense of others. An ongoing rise in the population of great tits and blue tits, for example, could be costly for some of the birds that we don't often see in our gardens.
Our worry as ecologists is that by providing sort of unlimited food for species like blue and great tits, we impact upon the species which compete with blue and great tits. So there are two other species of tits which many people might not have heard of. One's called the marsh tit and another's called the willow tit. And both of them are amongst the fastest declining birds in the UK. And sort of blue and great tits are species we call dominant species, whereas marsh and willow tit are subordinate species. So basically in sort of battles for food and nest sites, it's the blue and great tits which come out on top.
More research is needed to understand whether and where we should be providing extra food for wild birds. In cities, for example, the lack of other natural food sources means that species like house sparrows have come to depend on feeders. But something these scientists say might do more ecological good is if those of us who are lucky enough to have gardens let them grow wild and plant native fruits and berries. Creating our own little piece of habitat, they say, could help provide a haven for many more species than hanging out a bird feeder. Victoria Gill, BBC News.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.